What's happening, guys? Chris, VA Travels. If you're new to my channel, I make vlogs visiting historical sites in and around Virginia. I visit historical homes, battlefields, museums. Today I shot up here to Arlington. I'm going to visit the Arlington House. It's the home of Robert E. Lee. I just parked. It's $3 an hour for parking. And I'm headed up to get my ticket. Okay, I just walked through the visitor center. That's where you buy tickets for the Arlington Cemetery, which is kind of the main attraction up here. And by the way, it's pretty busy. Yeah, so I've got to take about a 10-minute walk down this path. I take a right on Weeks Drive, and yeah, that's where I can check in for the house. Oh, and while I'm taking my walk, for anybody who watched my video on the art show I went to, my mom's paintings, just to let you know, if you're interested in anything you saw, I can get you a 20% discount. Let me know. I'll put her email address in the box below the video. There it is. And just enjoying some shade here under this giant magnolia tree. The house is up here to the right. I hope this sidewalk takes me there. I believe this is supposed to be a tomb of an unknown soldier. All right, yeah, walking right into the gardens, and we're right by Reagan Airport. Cool, all right, good. Yeah, there's not too many people over here. Yeah, what a great spot looking over DC, right over there behind the trees. Okay, coming up on the first plaques here. And looks like a little overview of the plantation. Obviously the big house is number 3 right here. Right behind it, the slave quarters. Flower garden. And yeah, the museum up behind it. Working plantation. Alright, so this was once an 1,100 acre plantation. The house was built in 1802 by George Washington Park Custis. He is the step grandson of George Washington, and he is the father-in-law of Robert E. Lee. So, and he actually had first built this. He intended it to be a memorial. Wow, what a great shot of DC. Washington Monument. You can see the Capitol building. Yeah, and he briefly called this Mount Washington. And the northern wing, I think that would be on the right-hand side. That was built 1802. The southern wing, I'm thinking this is the southern wing. That was built 1804. And this giant portico, this was put here 1808. So it was the last thing built. And obviously a Greek revival style home. Huge pediment up there. And of course this isn't marble. It was actually built of brick and timber. Covered with stucco and painted to look like marble. Yeah, let me go back real quick and look at these. This is talking about Pierre Charles L'Enfant. He's the one, obviously, who designed DC. Let me zoom in here. Great spot for some artillery. But oh yeah, right there, Memorial Bridge that was built in 1933, crossing over, connecting to the Lincoln Memorial. Yeah, this just just goes over all the key landmarks there. The White House, Library of Congress, Jefferson Memorial. All right, let me find out where I buy tickets. All right. Yeah, it's a free self-guided tour. That's pretty awesome. And I'm in the main entrance hallway. You can imagine they would have these doors open. Have a great cross breeze coming through. Looks like there's George right there. Two of George. Okay, over here, this is the white parlor. Pretty nice furniture. Looks like some T blocks right there. Piano. There's Robert E. Lee in his younger military days. There's his father, Henry Lighthorse Lee. Over here, the family parlor. The spiritual center of the home, it says. There's George Washington Park Custis, the guy who had the house built. And this is where they would have evening prayer. Oh, that looks like Robert King Carter. That's Robert E. Lee's great-great-grandfather. I talk about him a lot. He was a huge landowner all through the Northern Neck, late 1600s. And this is the dining room. This Montgomery Meigs, he's the one who had it turned into a cemetery during the war. And notable dining guests included Andrew Jackson, Franklin Pierce. Here are some descendants of the families of the slaves. Okay, it looks like they had the winter kitchen downstairs. Help keep the place. Well, here's a virtual tour of the winter kitchen. Love of flowers. Talking about his wife liked the garden. A reminder of the past. The other side of this white parlor here. And Robert E. Lee served 32 years in the U.S. Army. Worked as a superintendent, West Point. Obviously fought in the Mexican-American War. And here is a violin and bow owned by George Washington Park Custis. West Point right there. And this is the morning room. Mary Custis Lee was painting in this room when the house was seized by Union troops. And George Washington Park Custis was a painter. And yeah, he worshipped his step-grandfather, George Washington. And yeah, he bought a lot of his items at an estate sale at Mount Vernon. furnished this place. And he was actually George Washington's adopted son. George Washington Park Custis, his father, died when he was really young, so he was pretty much raised by George Washington. Battle of Buena Vista, Battle of Palo Alto, some shots of the Mexican-American War. Obviously, that's George. And here's a timeline of the home. I went over this earlier. First portion built 1802. And Robert E. Lee actually never owned the house. It was passed to his wife, Mary Custis. So, yeah, they had 7 children. 6 were born in this house. And Robert E. Lee actually wasn't here very often. Obviously, he was in the military. Can't see that painting very good, but it looks like George Washington. Oh, and Robert E. Lee was denied his request to become a U.S. citizen after the war, but in 1975, Gerald Ford kind of pardoned him and became a U.S. citizen. All right, that was my house tour. I did the best I could. It started to get a little crowded. And back here, I believe this is going to be a slave house. The Gray family lived here. Selina Gray, born into slavery, 1823. And many of the slaves that lived here were brought here from Mount Vernon. This is her posing with her 2 daughters. And Thornton Gray tended the horses and carriages. It's a pretty big cedar right there. And get a shot of the back of the house. Oh, you can go in. Yeah, this is the South slave quarters. Oh. And yeah, those are some of the descendants. Gold mine of history. Patsy Clark, Lawrence Clark, Uncle Jim. Key to the tomb of the Civil War unknown monument. Oh, and this also became a freedmen's village after the Civil War, a small community built for freed slaves. Some school books. Some interactive stuff. It looks like that's down. Fireplace. Here's a cream pitcher. All right, so yeah, this really breaks it down, a family tree. All right, here we go. All right, so George Washington had married Martha Dandridge Custis after her first husband had died, Daniel Custis. They had a son, John Park Custis. He died young, died in the Revolutionary War, but he had a son, George Washington Park Custis, who's the one who built this house. All right, so he is George Washington's step-grandson, but since his father died young, he was adopted by George Washington and raised as George's son. Okay, so he married Mary Lee Fitzhugh of the big Fitzhugh family. William Fitzhugh, her father, had built Chatham Manor. Fitzhughs owned a lot of the Northern Neck. And so their daughter, Mary Ann Randolph, she's the one who inherited the property, married Robert E. Lee. And they had 7 children, like I said, 6 born here at the house.
To him, because now I see something tangible in front of me. He walked these same grounds. He came to the same house on a daily basis. And he was the only slave that was born on the Arlington House property.
Have been really amazing to me.
Okay. So, yeah, that was a little video of some of the descendants telling the stories about some of the slaves. Over here, the Gray family quarters. And this would be the Gray family bed with a little cat sleeping.
It is a most lovely place now.
A home for 10. 2 boys, 6 girls, and Selena Norris and Thornton Gray. And she was a housekeeper. He cared for the horses. And they had fancier clothes and shoes. Well, they were house slaves, basically.
My dear old mother and father, both gone.
Okay, over here, the North Slave Quarters. The summer kitchen. Feels good in here. George Clark, the cook. Alright. Couple beds up here, real tiny fireplace. Culinary traditions. Here, 3 to 6 slaves, work prepared meals. Kitchen down here.
Providing meals for the Custis and Hall families was an emergency.
All right. Hi. Thanks. In here, this is Judy's room. Never free, on duty, an utterly enslaved woman lived in this room. She was born in Mount Vernon. She was a dowered slave, meaning George Washington had wanted all of his slaves to be freed after his wife had died, but the dowered slaves weren't freed because they weren't really his. On Judy. This one over here says the many voices of Arlington Plantation. Over here, kind of a floor plan. Like I said, we're just over at Aunt Judy's place. Roads to Freedom. Longest Wait. The Shores of Africa. And it's talking about how they tried to start a freedmen's colony over in Liberia, in Monrovia, named after James Monroe. It didn't really work out because it was more profitable for the slave owners to sell their slaves down south than to just let them leave and go to Africa. Oh, and it's kind of funny because a lot of the freed slaves who went started the same plantation system that they had ran from over there. They became slave owners themselves. to summon workers. Mortar and pestle.
State festivities are musical trouble in Edson. For strife and havoc, they broke to some unseen town inside for rest of years.
Looks like the well over here. Kitchen garden back here. Pieces of the past put together, artifacts. It's talking about archaeology work. Museum entrance. Okay, in the Robert E. Lee Museum. Feels good in here. Have the air conditioning cranked. The greatest mistake. His mentor, Winfield Scott, tried to talk him out of seceding, but it didn't work. 2 days later, he joined the Confederacy. And here he is in his U.S. military uniform, U.S. Army uniform. Pictures from 1850. He served 32 years in the U.S. Army. Obviously had a pretty storied career in the U.S. Army, fought in the Mexican-American War. And there's his mother, Ann Hill Carter Lee. His hat badge. His nightgown. He was an engineer in St. Louis. And this Colt revolver was given him by the staff at West Point. Pretty small. Oh yeah, Harper's Ferry, of course. Called out to squash that. He and Jeb Stuart. Of course, he surrenders. And his insignia embrayed. His chess set. And field desk. Mess kit. Over here, portable desk. And a Gothic Revival chair. And yeah, he comes from a family of Federalists, and they were kind of the Northern Party. That's the party of Hamilton, John Adams. And his father, Henry Lighthorse Harry Lee, Virginia governor, Federalist. Hair locket, comb, cufflinks with his initials. Washington's tent cover. Cane used by his father. And here's a dish set. 302 piece set belonging to George Washington. All right. And you can watch a little video talking about the complexities of his life. 1955, put into law, made Arlington House a permanent memorial to Lee. And talking about the duality, he had made statements. He thought slavery was a moral wrong, but of course he still owned slaves. And this is a couple years before his death, when he was teaching over there at Washington and Lee. All right. There's the only photo of Lee on his horse Traveler. Lee's hair and Traveler's mane. All right, and this is the pen that Dwight D. Eisenhower used. Did sign this into making it a memorial for Robert E. Lee. Oh, and Dwight D. Eisenhower was a big fan of Stonewall Jackson and Robert E. Lee. Lee's trunk, passed down from his mother. Restoring Peace. Beauregard, Jackson, and Lee. Here's a good painting right here. Portrait. All right, a little bit of a rushed walkthrough of the Lee Museum. And see what else there is to look at. Shot of the side in the back of the house. And I think I may have seen it all. I'm just gonna walk through the gardens on the way out of here. You can see part of the Pentagon over there, the memorial, 9/11 memorial. Okay, in front of us was the Freedmen's Village. And, well, first off to tell you, this was a big timber forest. George Washington Park Custis, he owned a timber mill. And the village included a hospital, kitchen, old folks home, school, carpenter shop. And about 1,100 people lived there, including Sojourner Truth. So, pretty interesting. All right, with that, I think I'm gonna close this thing out. I'm a little bit disappointed. It got really crowded, so I couldn't do as much talking as I wanted. Maybe that's a good thing. And yeah, before I get out of here, I don't push it off enough. I do have a Patreon I wanted to mention. You can join for as little as $3 a month, help out with gas, hotels. If you join my top tier, I'll go to any site in Virginia that you want and make a video. So anyway, as always, like and subscribe, and you can follow me on Instagram. See you.